Hi, hello, and welcome to episode 1 of dissecting random things that people my age don't really care about. So, today, my name is Michaela Branham, and I'm going to be kind of dissecting, well, not dissecting, but talking about the Lincoln and Kennedy assassinations and kind of doing myth busting on, the list of coincidences that there are, kind of seeing which ones are true, which ones are false, and just talking about the assassinations in general. So, grab your snacks, grab your drinks, buckle up, and yeah, we're gonna get started. I'm basically just gonna I'm gonna talk about the Lincoln assassination, then I'm gonna talk about the Kennedy assassination, and then I'm gonna kind of go over the list of similarities between the two because there have been a lot of urban legends and conspiracies about how similar the two assassinations were. And we're going to be seeing which ones are factual and which ones are not. So I just kind of wanted to break it down for you guys to keep myself grounded and to kind of let you guys know what's going to go down in this podcast episode. So yeah, first we're just going to start off with the man, the myth, the legend, Abraham Lincoln. So his assassination was on April 14th, 1865. Done by a man named John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth, to kind of give you a little bit of background, he was this famous actor. He was married to this lovely lady named Martha Mills, Mary Martha Mills, I think that's her name. And he kind of had it all. He, in comparison at least to the other presidential assassins, he didn't really seem to be unright in the head. He seemed to be pretty okay. Not to discount anything, I'm no certified shrink, so I can't really give you that, but he seemed to be pretty normal compared to the other people who tried or did assassinate presidents. Voted most handsome man in America. That doesn't really matter, but just to give you a little bit of context, he was pretty popular. He acted, he had a rich family, he had a wife, he had it all in America. But the problem with John Wilkes Booth is that he was a Southerner. He was for slavery, he was for the Confederacy, and Abraham Lincoln was not. And John Wilkes Booth didn't he kind of felt that Abraham Lincoln, quote unquote, killed his country. Killed what country, dude? This happened in Ford's Theater. Lincoln was watching a play, and John Wilkes Booth came from behind a curtain, quite literally pulled out a gun, shot Lincoln in the head, and yelled, "Sic semper tyrannis," which translates to, "Thus unto tyrants." So he thought Lincoln was so bad that he believed him to be a tyrant. And you see, after this crime happened, John Wilkes Booth was wanted for $50,000 after murdering Lincoln. I don't even know anyone that has that kind of money today. I can bet you not very many people had that kind of money back in 1865. Again, he was against the abolition of slavery, so that is kind of why he murdered Lincoln. The country was in shock. Literally, not everyone was for Lincoln at the time because the Civil War had just ended, but after he was assassinated, he kind of gained a lot more popularity, kind of similar to Kennedy. Kennedy had a lot of mixed reviews. Not really liked by the Republicans, obviously, because he was a Democrat. But after he died, people were like, wow, we love this guy. Kind of the same with Lincoln. And the country was in shock because nothing like this had ever happened. Granted, America was a relatively new country. Still kind of is. Well, America colonized, if you know what I mean. I don't want to, discount anything. It was relatively new, but this was the first president that was assassinated. And newspapers were like, condition is considered hopeless. The doctors declare that Lincoln will not live through the night. People, they wouldn't really have this news if newspapers didn't exist, and they were kept in the loop of the state that Lincoln was in. And this could either be viewed as a good thing or a bad thing because the country was kind of in chaos because they were like, what is happening? Our president has just been shot. But it's also good because then they were kind of knowing, and they weren't hearing 2 weeks later, oh, hey, your president was shot and he's now dead. It was very upsetting because, like I said, this was the first president to be assassinated. A lot of the people genuinely didn't know how to react. And this is kind of ironic, but I just wanted to point it out. Lincoln was warned by Mary Todd Lincoln not to go to Ford's Theater. She was like, this is not a good idea. We don't know the reasoning behind that, but we do know that she warned him, and he died smiling. So, very sad for him. But he is viewed as a good president. I believe that he was a good president. But this is not about my opinions. I'm just here to give you the facts. So, now we're going to be covering the JFK assassination. This one, there is a lot more on because there are still so many conspiracy theories to this day. There was more media coverage, just the whole shebang. There is a lot more information on this assassination as a whole because we are able to kind of use the technology to our advantage to do more research on this. And with the Lincoln, it was kind of black and white. With JFK's assassination, it's a little more sketchy. There's a little more questions about it. So yeah. Like I said, there are a lot of unknowns about this assassination to this day, and it's been almost 60 years. For like around a week, this whole assassination was all over the media, because, you know, JFK was assassinated, and then 2 days later, his alleged assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, was shot and killed, and then they did the funeral for JFK at the White House, everything. This was similar to the Lincoln assassination. This came as a big shock to the nation because even though a lot of people didn't like Kennedy, he was still very popular throughout the nation. News reporters, the senator, and nurses even cried when he was killed. There were nurses crying in his room, which was a little bit unusual, but he was just that loved and respected. And so, on the day that this happened, November 22nd, 1963, JFK was going in a motorcade around Dallas. He had also had like a press conference kind of meeting in Fort Worth that morning. And after Dallas, he was supposed to go on and kind of campaign throughout Texas. And Texas was a little bit of weird territory because he wasn't really liked there because it was a Republican state, still is, and JFK was a Democrat, and they were like, there were newspapers that went around wanting him for treason, just to give you a little bit of background. But it was also weird because Lyndon B. Johnson, the vice president, was a Texan, but he was a Democrat, so that kind of gave JFK a little bit more fluff. And so on the day that this happened, JFK was going in the motorcade in his car, in the convertible, and a lot of people at the time believed that a man named Lee Harvey Oswald shot JFK from the Texas School Book Depository. That is what a lot of people believed at the time, and still believe, but there are a lot of theories now on who actually killed JFK. We don't have a clear answer. I like to believe that Oswald was simply in the wrong place in the wrong time, and he was a communist, which I'm not a communist, but he talked sometimes about, he was like, you know, if I were not a communist, I would probably vote for Kennedy. He kind of respected the man, and just the way the story is told is a little bit unlikely that he killed JFK. He even stated, like, hey, you're not giving me a lawyer. I have no right. Like, I have a right to have a lawyer. I had no reason to kill the president. Yeah, it was just really weird at the time. It still is. It's still a mystery that so many people cannot figure out. And he was shot and killed. He was silenced. 2 days after, Jack Ruby came up when they were escorting Oswald to another prison, and he was shot and killed, so he never got to talk. And literally, this assassination was broadcasted on the news all over the world. There were people that went crazy all over the world because of the situation. One woman in Italy leapt from the Duomo. She was holding a picture of JFK and was screaming curses to Lee Harvey Oswald because of the situation. It was a big thing. So now we're just gonna, we're gonna go over the similarities between the two. These are, a lot of them are just kind of like silly little things, but the more you think about it, the more you're like, hey, what if this is a coincidence? So, both of the last names Kennedy and Lincoln have 7 letters. Not that big of a deal, just something somebody decided to count. Both presidents were assassinated by men with 15 letters in their names, because Lee Harvey Oswald and John Wilkes Booth, which is a coincidence. at the same time, but both of these men did start being known with their middle names included after the fact that they assassinated presidents, allegedly, in Lee Harvey Oswald's case, but I don't have to keep saying that because I think you get the gist. This one is not true, but I would like to read over it. Lincoln was shot in a theater, and his assassin ran to a warehouse. Kennedy was shot from a warehouse, and his assassin ran to a theater. This is not true because John Wilkes Booth did not run to a warehouse. I believe he was shot and killed in a warehouse. But Lee Harvey Oswald he didn't really shoot JFK, in my opinion, but he was in a warehouse, a Texas School Book Depository, and later he was arrested in a theater. Both presidents were shot in the presence of their wives, and both of their wives were like, hey, maybe this isn't a really good idea. And another ironic thing is that JFK wanted to ride in the open convertible. He was told by Dallas, he said, this is a bad idea, or he was told by Jackie that going to Dallas was a bad idea because he was quite literally wanted for treason there, and the Republicans just didn't like him, but he was like, I want some more people on my side. Texas is a big state. This could be good for my campaign. And the night before he was assassinated, it was rainy, it was dark, it was stormy. He said it would have been a heck of a night to assassinate a president, and it is quite ironic that he said that because, unfortunately, obviously he died the next day. Both presidents were shot in the head. I guess in John Wilkes Booth's case, I feel like it would be kind of crude to say it was easier that way, but it was just how it happened. Kennedy just happened to go through his neck and then again in his head. Both assassins were Southerners. Well, Southerners is a loose term. John Wilkes Booth was from Maryland, but it's not really South, but at the time it was a part of the Confederacy, which was the South, and Lee Harvey Oswald was from Louisiana and lived in Texas most of his life. Both assassins died relatively soon, within the time that they assassinated their respective presidents. John Wilkes Booth was a few days, around to a week, after he assassinated Lincoln. Lee Harvey Oswald was assassinated 2 days after he not assassinated, he was shot and killed 2 days after he assassinated JFK. Like I said, by a man named Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby said, that son of a killed my president, and that's kind of what he claimed the reasoning behind killing Oswald was, but many believe that there was more to it than that, because he went to jail and did not talk on the issue until he died 4 years later. He did not speak about it, so many believe that there's more to it than just he was angry that Oswald supposedly killed Kennedy. And like I brought up earlier, both presidents were respected a little more after their assassinations. People were more sympathetic towards them. This is not to say that they were great people. I don't know a lot about Lincoln's life, but I know that Kennedy was just kind of a womanizer, and he had a lot of women that he would invite over and have affairs with. But Jackie was well aware of this. I'm not saying it's okay, but she was just kind of, yeah. And to kind of answer the general question, how are these assassinations similar? They are very similar. A lot of the, quote-unquote coincidences just happen to be that way. Anyone can have a last name with 7 letters. Not anyone, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Each president also kind of shared parallels in their own lives. And then yeah, so that's kind of the gist of this whole story. The assassinations are very similar, but Kennedy's, there's more coverage and there's way more conspiracy about it now. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode, and thanks for listening. Bye.